So they've cloned the World Bank, they've cloned the IMF, they've got all these committees. They've been meeting for 17 years at this point, and now they're ready to unveil. Again, this will be the biggest shock in the international monetary system since 1971. Richard Nixon suspended redemptions of dollars for gold among our trading partners. That was the shock, of course. But that's the kind of magnitude we're looking at. What the BRICS are going to do, they're going to unveil a new currency. Now, I've always poured cold water on the Chinese yuan is going to be the reserve currency, and the Russian ruble is going to be. I've always poured cold water on that. I've absolutely not. That's not going to happen. But a new currency, you're starting with a clean slate. August 22nd, 2023, about 2 months from where we are now. It's a BRICS summit. It's in Durban, South Africa. Of course, BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. So that's what the BRICS are. And they have a rotating presidency. So South Africa is the president. Ramaphosa is the president of the BRICS this year. And he's hosting this summit in Durban, South Africa. So people go, yeah, BRICS have been around forever. They've been meeting, yakking, whatever. Who cares? Well, here's what's different. Number one, this is a leaders summit, meaning Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, Lula da Silva, Prime Minister Modi, and President Ramaphosa are all going to be there. Right now, there's a full-scale assault on the US dollar as the leading global payment currency. So what do we see? The other day, the Prime Minister of Malaysia met with Chairman Xi Jinping in Beijing and suggested the creation of an Asian Monetary Fund, like a regional version of the IMF, but it wouldn't be dollar-based or even SDR-based. That's the IMF's money. It would be either a basket of local currencies or local currencies pegged to a basket. And that Asian Monetary Fund would be able to lend to members if they're running a trade deficit or they need some infrastructure. I could make you a loan using this Asian currency basket. Then you could buy oil or whatever you needed. So that's on the table. They have 190 BRICS meetings a year. I mean, this is a very mature organization at this point. They have a sports committee, they have a women's rights committee, they have a human rights committee, they have an immigration committee, they have banking, finance, and many, many others. They've been working on this since 2006. And they created the New Development Bank, the NDB. Well, it's an exact clone of the World Bank, except it's controlled by the BRICS. Then they created something called the Contingency Reserve Asset, which is an exact clone of the IMF. It's a swing lender, so you're running a balance of payments deficit. You got to run on the bank. Your currency's under attack. They can give you billions of dollars in loans until you can make some policy changes and then kind of prop it up. But that's why the IMF was invented, and that's what this is. The biggest project right now is not final, but BRICS Plus, so BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. But the Plus is interesting because they've now invited 20 other countries to join their meetings. They have 4 or 5 meetings a year, a leadership summit, a finance minister summit, a defense summit, etc. So that group is now expanded to include Iran, Turkey, Argentina, Chile, and a lot of other important countries. UAE and China just agreed on a deal where China can buy oil from Dubai in yuan, in Chinese yuan. Saudi Arabia and China are talking about a similar deal. It's not final yet, but that's in the works. I think people expect it soon. China and Brazil just did a very extensive bilateral deal where they would accept each other's currencies. We're looking at more than 50% of global GDP, about 40% of global population. I think about 40% of the global land mass, because you got Russia and China in there, 2 of the 5 biggest countries in the world. 2 of the 3 biggest nuclear powers, including the biggest nuclear power, which is Russia. Throw Saudi Arabia in the mix, you got 2 of the 3 biggest energy producers, Saudi Arabia and Russia, etc. And the Indian population is surpassing the Chinese population as we speak, at 1.4 billion. So this is not some, rinky-dink group of the third world countries or whatever. It's not, Colombia and Syria, whatever. This is half the world or more in terms of population, resources, military capacity, land mass, and wealth and output. If I'm Russia or China and I have BRICS currency through trade channels and it's linked to gold. Do I want the price of gold to go up or down? I want it to go up because that makes me richer. But the price of gold, to the extent it's denominated in dollars, if they're strengthening or raising the price of gold, what's happening to the dollar? It's going down. There was an increase in the dollar price of gold. It's not really a change in the price of gold. It's a devaluation of the dollar. It's not about gold. It's about the dollar. So that's going to be extremely inflationary.
Wow.
And this thing could feed on itself very quickly. The International Court of Justice has issued an international arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin. So, and South Africa is a member of the International Court of Justice. So will Putin be arrested when he steps off the plane in Durban, South Africa? I doubt it. I'm sure they're going to work that out in advance. But the president of South Africa has granted diplomatic immunity to all attendees of all BRICS conferences during their presidency of BRICS. I would have thought Putin had diplomatic immunity anyway, but there's a little drama in there. But I'm sure if they arrest Putin, there'll be consequences. The political, we got to raise the debt ceiling because the U.S. has never defaulted on its debt. We have to raise the debt ceiling. We can't default on the debt. I was just laughing. I said, we default on our debt all the time. What do you think happened to Russia? They had $150 billion of U.S. Treasury securities and digital book entry. They're not paper. The Treasury froze those securities. Okay, if I buy a bond and you don't pay me principal and interest, that's a default. You can call it what you want, but we're not paying the principal and interest to Russia, so we defaulted on those bonds. Now, if you're S&P or Moody's, you can call it a selective default. Okay, the U.S. is saying, oh, pay no attention to that 150 billion. We'll pay the rest of you people. Really? Why should you believe that when they just froze Russia? So we defaulted on Treasury securities owned by the Central Bank of Russia. The other key thing, and this is the key to the whole thing, Brian, it's going to be linked to gold. Now, this is not a strict gold standard. I don't want to overstate it. I don't want to say if you have a brick, you can march into People's Bank of China and demand gold. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying the value linked to gold. The whole idea is to get out from under the dollar. And I go back 10, 12 years. I used to warn, I was being in skiffs in the Pentagon and private meetings with the Treasury. And I warned them all. I said, sanctions work. The dollar's powerful. I get it. You're using it against Iran. But you're overusing it, you're overapplying it, and you are going to, at some point, people are going to get out of the dollar system. It's like, how many times can you hit the punching bag before the punching bag walks away? So I think the BRICS will end up coming to the same conclusion. It's like, yeah, it's really complicated. Let's just go to gold. So you can see a new BRICS digital currency tied to gold coming out within the year.